Welcome to a very special recording in progress, a show that's so experimental, we're going to make a bonus feature on a previous show. I got Jim with me here, because Jim's always about experimental podcasting and pushing the boundaries.
Yep.
So, when we were talking about Captain Marvel, I had a lot more to say because there's a lot of fascinating... What? Just a second.
Oh.
We're so experimental that I accidentally didn't mute my YouTube screen. With a little oopsie doopsie. little oopsie doopsie I had here. So yeah, I was very passionate about a lot of things I wanted to say about the Captain Marvel movie. And I couldn't say them without doing spoilers, and Jim wanted to get in on that hot, compelling content action, and he went to go see Captain Marvel.
Yep.
So Jim, give first the audience your non-spoiler thoughts about the movie.
I liked it. Asterisk. I'm kind of with Mike on this one. Really, I enjoyed it. I had a good time. There was lots of problems with it. And it wasn't exactly the best Marvel. So when I go see a Marvel film, I have high expectations, right? I understand that it's not supposed to be high intellectual entertainment. It's supposed to be bad guy gets punched. And usually when bad guy gets punched, I have a great time.
Also, it could be evil space laser. Don't forget about evil space laser.
I'm done with the space laser stuff. That's more phase 1 stuff, and I'm done with phase 1. And that's the problem, is that we got the giant space laser back, but in a different form. And so, yeah, is it a good movie? Yes, but that's the problem. It's just a fine, okay, decent movie. It's not up to the standards that I hold Marvel to. Now, it's not as bad as Thor, and it's definitely not as bad as Thor Dark World. Oh, God.
Well, you see, I always like Thor, but that's because, it's Kenneth Branagh, that whole Shakespearean drama and melodrama thing. And, Thor getting thrown out, fish out of water, needing to humble himself.
But
something that could have happened in this movie, but didn't.
So, yeah, there was definitely some issues. Someone said there was plot holes. I didn't notice any. Am I missing stuff here? Did you find any plot holes?
Not a real plot hole.
Yeah. I mean, there was something that they're like, but...
There was some bad writing, but I wouldn't really call it a plot hole. So...
Yeah, okay.
Let's start off the spoiler review by beginning in the beginning. And
that's the problem, is that the movie kind of spoils itself.
Well, we're going to begin with the movie's beginning, not the beginning. So, and of course, since we told you this was going to be a spoiler review, and it says spoiler review on the actual channel, right? Let me look at it here.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, well, You know what? At this point in time, this is your spoiler warning.
Yeah.
If you don't want a spoiler, you best get out now.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have a bad time if you don't want a spoiler. So we're going to start with the beginning of the movie. The beginning of the movie starts with a fight sequence that tells you what the central conflict, and I use the word conflict with lots of air quotes,
I can't
of the
put
movie
enough
is all
quotation
about.
marks around the word conflict, so I'm not even going to try.
And the movie ends with the same starting point framing device at the end of the movie. So what normally happens in a movie where you see something happening in the beginning happen in the end? Like, we'll use Aquaman for an example.
Well, I didn't see Aquaman.
Okay, so in Aquaman learned to do cool fight moves with a trident. But he didn't know how to do them during most of the movie, but he figured out how to do them at the end. And that's how you do this sort of thing. If you're using a framing device, either the person learns and grows and figures out how to be the awesome master of everything, or the person realizes some secret trick that nobody else realizes and wins the day by being clever. Something like that. So these two framing points in Captain Marvel, she remains exactly the same. And these two framing points are all about how women need to not restrain their emotions and not keep themselves in control and trying to behave like and act under the standards of men. So what this movie is saying is...
Oh, and if you fall, get back up.
Well, we're going to touch on that in a minute.
Okay.
But what the movie is saying in a nutshell, is that women shouldn't restrain themselves or be controlled and dominated emotionally by men's standards, but should live under their own standards. So, if that's your theme, and that's what you're saying your theme is at the beginning of the movie, then Vers, her Kree identity, and we're going to dig more into that later, should have been restrained and restricted and put on a bad path by having to live under the standards the Kree wanted her to. Mm-hmm. So did that happen anywhere in the movie, Jim, that you saw?
No.
No. She acted the same way at the beginning of the movie that she did at the end of the movie. And the iconic fight scene for the beginning and the end of the movie ended the same way, with her saying to the male authority figure, I don't have to prove myself to you, which basically means is Carol was perfect just the way she was at the beginning of the movie, so there is no emotional character arc throughout the entire movie. She doesn't go on a real journey of self-discovery either, because she's got amnesia, which features in the beginning a little bit, but what does her amnesia do that actually changes how she behaves once she realizes, oh wait, I'm actually Carol Danvers, human test pilot? Does it change anything how she behaves? No. I think Brie Larson functions better because she knows what her character is at the end of the movie when she has that, but there's no actual change there. So she goes
the only real change doesn't come in her personality or the way she acts or anything like that. It comes in the way of, oh, I'm going to help these people now instead of these people because I now realize the people that I was helping weren't the good guys after all. You just had a change in perspective. That's all.
Yeah. That's not something you have in a movie. It's like, you know what? Instead of eating fish today, I'm going to eat chicken. That's not a change that you want in a movie. And I'm being a little flippant, but not a whole lot flippant. It's not that big of a change. It's like, oh, these people aren't actually evil terrorists. They're refugees who've been beset by terrible problems.
Now, yeah. See, here's how you could make something like, oh, I'm going to eat chicken today instead of fish. Is if you say like, oh, I'm Muslim. Oh, I'm going to eat pork today. Because maybe that'll be a symbol for something that actually was a major change in the movie. But we didn't get that. All we got was just they're eating pork, but they're still Muslim.
Samuel L. Jackson went through a character arc, went through emotional and character growth and change. Her best friend, although she didn't have much of an arc, she had a very short time on the screen. She had a character arc. Mm-hmm. The cool alien shape-shifting Skrull person from Australia had a character arc. Mm-hmm. Why didn't the main character have a character arc?
The cat had an arc.
Yes, the cat had a character arc.
And it was only on film for 10 minutes.
So basically, all the characters the movie wants us to be emotionally invested in have character arcs except the main character.
And that's not a good look.
And this is sort of a problem with what a lot of people consider loaded language, but Mary Sue. This is a classic Mary Sue move. Everybody loves the character. Everybody thinks she's great. She's powerful enough to beat everybody. And she's perfect the way she is. And this is very common when people are being lazy and writing a script.
Yeah. And the other thing that I thought what was weird was she had this thing on her neck, right? And that was supposed to be the source of her power. But
or at least she thought it was.
Yeah. But it turned out that's not the big, remember, spoiler. It turned out it wasn't. It was actually restraining her abilities to do things. But her ability to kick ass didn't change. The only thing that really changed was she was able to fly and do more stuff in space. Oh yeah,
I mean, we don't know she couldn't do stuff in space before because the movie didn't show us. The movie didn't give us a perspective that she was limited in any way by this device.
Yeah. The only real limitations that I saw that she overcame was stuff that she did in space, where it was like, oh yeah, I don't think she could have done that, but her fighting ability didn't really change at all. Like she still had struggles to fight the other people, which if she was restrained, it didn't really demonstrate it in her fighting ability, except that she actually won.
So also,
even though she didn't really lose the other time. So I mean, whatever.
No kink shaming, but bondage is a very consistent visual metaphor throughout this whole movie. So so this thing, we're not just saying that the patriarchy is restraining her. repeatedly she gets bonded and bound up by the male authority figure. Mm-hmm. So we're going to put an asterisk on that for a moment, which we're going to talk about later. So Carol, we get to see her squad of soldiers, right? So if we're supposed to buy into her being this different non-human person that's going to go through a journey and a character arc and change, shouldn't her fellow soldiers and she have a relationship? Shouldn't there be an emotional back and forth other than, oh, here's some banter. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. No. Now, there's something I don't think the Marvel movie writers wanted to touch on from the comic books is the Kree are a horribly racist society, and they're xenophobic. And they're racist and xenophobic because they're at a genetic dead end. So the main character of Vers, a.k.a. Carol Danvers, is one of the Pinks, who's an oppressed underclass in the comics for the Kree. Rog, who's Jude Law's character, is also a Pink, and is the leader of the elite military force. So we have somebody who's not meeting up the mustard, who's a part of an oppressed minority, who's being supervised by an oppressed minority, but everybody else on the team, except for the black guy, is part of the dominant blue-skin Kree race. Why didn't we see anything with that?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the comics. All I know is what I see in the movies.
Well, no,
because I don't. No.
But what I'm saying is that's something you can build interesting story dynamics out of, right?
But we're not interested in that. We're just trying to make Whammons feel good.
Oh.
So here's another issue that I had with the movie is that, and when I saw this, I actually groaned audibly, and I probably offended the Whammons sitting behind me. But there was a part where they were in the subway. They were like some sort of train.
Elevated train in Los Angeles.
No. It was in when they were in Kree Land.
Oh, the Kree subway. Yeah.
So they were in the Kree subway, and she was asking them about the AI, the
right.
evil AI,
the supreme intelligence.
Yeah, and it was like, let me explain this to you, even though you already know that. And I was like, this is terrible writing.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah. And he went into full detail about the whole thing, even though she knew about it. And it's like, is there another way that you can have this exposition explained to me that doesn't seem like shoehorned and convoluted?
Here's this extremely specific cultural taboo that, of course, you know about, but the audience doesn't know about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell the audience.
Yeah. It would have been more interesting had there been like another character who genuinely did not know anything about this, or maybe like a new recruit to their little team that was like, oh, tell me more about this. That would have made sense. But why are you explaining something to someone who already knows about this, and you know that she already knows about this, other than to try to explain it to the audience? It just seems so shoehorned, and like they're like, oh shit, we got to explain this. Let's just cram this in real quick.
Now we're going to talk about the performance of Annette Bening as the Supreme Intelligence a little bit later, but there's something important from the comics to take in mind. Mar-Vell, who Carol takes her name from, both in the comics and in the movie, but it's an extremely dumb way in the movie, was an opponent of the Supreme Intelligence. It was a high-ranking Kree official who defected and opposed it. So you are an advanced AI, and you're taking the form of somebody who's a vanquished foe. And you're using that form to manipulate a protege of said vanquished foe. Shouldn't we have seen that in Annette Bening's performance? Shouldn't there have been some of that nuance in there?
I don't know. I probably didn't follow that closely.
Yeah. So, talks to the godlike computer, gives him a mission. They go to hunt down aliens. Now, I didn't realize this, and it was probably in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and it didn't stick with me, was the way they visually represented the jump gates. So, like in the comics, the jump gates are actually physical stargates. But there's like, there's just holes that have appeared outside the planet, now you're going there. That was kind of visually confusing to me. And they went down to the planet, there was like the primitive aliens, and they were going to recover the guy who was trapped behind enemy lines, and I get it, this is a predictable comic book movie, but this would have been a good moment for some subversion of expectations. Like, you expect the guy you're trying to recover to be the secret shape-shifting alien.
Or not having two lightsabers touch.
Or not having two lightsabers touch. So what you do to subvert expectations here is you have one of the native aliens try to escort you there, saying, the Skrulls are out to get him, but I know where he's hiding. And then, like, they say, okay, Vers, we trust you to go on that mission. And then he gets the guy, and then the friendly, trustworthy alien is the one who shoots him in the head and then kidnaps her. That would have been interesting. But we have the whole weird little My Lai massacre thing, and she gets stun gunned, which is the only time she loses a physical confrontation in the whole movie, which is a problem because, again, this is a heroic movie. Hero's on a journey, and the hero doesn't face defeat but one time. And they only
she does when she's little in flashbacks.
Yeah, but that's not really in the movie.
Right.
That's her remembering something that happens in what I would consider a better movie. but we're gonna get to that here in just a bit.
Okay.
We're gonna get to that in just a bit.
Okay.
So she gets kidnapped. And we find out later that members of her unit were there and recovered her on Earth. Wouldn't that have been the better time to start hinting that, wait, her origin story might not be what she thinks?
Yeah, but we actually got it explained to us in detail before she figured it out.
Which is dumb.
Yeah, that's where I was like, you could have saved all this stuff, and then we could have been like, oh. Okay, so there's this movie that I ended up watching a review for called The Neverending Story 2, and I was talking to a friend about this, and I was using it as a parallel. I think it's a good example. So I don't know if you ever saw The Neverending Story Part 2.
I did.
Okay, it's a terrible... I love
The Neverending Story Part 1, and yeah, it's awful.
It's a terrible fucking movie, and there's lots of things that don't make fucking any sense about it, including the wishes. But it would have been an interesting kind of dynamic. It would have made the movie like at least 100% better. It would still suck, but it would have made it a lot better. It would have made it enjoyable. When every time he makes a wish, he loses a memory, and we learn about this at the very beginning of the movie. But he doesn't know that. Only the audience knows that, and the spy, the bird, who's trying to convince him to make more wishes so he'd lose all his memory and get stuck in Never Ever Land, right?
Right.
But it gets exposed to him at the very end of the movie. It would have been a lot more interesting had they just cut that part out and said, we're not going to show that, make it seem like this bird character is a good person throughout the whole movie, but then the twist ending would have happened and been like, oh, I was losing memories all along. That's why I kept forgetting things. Oh my God, this is not good.
You mean what they did in the opening of BioShock? Would you kindly?
I didn't finish BioShock. I wasn't a particular fan. I wanted to like it. It seemed like a rail first-person shooter to me.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So she's getting, mind interrogated by the Skrulls, so we can see her flashbacks in more detail.
Yeah, I mean, like, that would have been much more interesting to have, like, little flashbacks. Like, oh, wait, there's something interesting about her. We don't know. But we got explained to it, so the final reveal was just kind of like, okay, now you're just learning stuff that we already knew.
Yeah.
All of this could have been cut. I
mean, there's
or you could have cut one little piece out of the movie and just moved it to the end, and then we could have got explained what her whole backstory was at the time that she was learning her whole backstory, so we wouldn't have to heard the same story twice, and the reveal would have been much more interesting and profound. But instead, we got Neverending Story 2, which I thought was a major hole. But not to say that it wasn't enjoyable. Some of this stuff in the middle I found enjoyable, but it could have been a whole lot better. It could have actually been a great film.
Yeah.
I think that would have crossed it into being like, this is a good movie that I would recommend to my friends had they just did that one little small edit. But
let's talk more about the flashback sequence. So we see her as a little girl, racing go-karts, having fun on the beach, playing, was it softball or was it actually baseball? I don't remember.
I think it was baseball proper.
Okay. Because, obviously it has to be baseball because softball's a girl's sport, right?
Right, yeah, because she was trying to play with the boys, I think. I think that's what it was. And everybody was like, you're not good enough to be with the men's.
And her dad was like being critical of her.
Obvious political message here.
But here's my problem with that. Her dad was being critical of her, but he kept taking her to these things. So here's an opportunity. If you had come up with a good way to run this in the movie, like, I don't know, show this in the beginning, having the Skrulls do voiceovers as they're playing through her memories, of explaining, well, why is it she keeps going into these things that she's told not to do? Well, obviously her dad did it for a reason. He was also a drunky drunk. So there was reasons to drive her from her father being a drunky drunk into doing all these things that people tell her not to do. But again, we don't get the flashbacks organized in a coherent way to actually tell us anything. It's just, oh, she's doing things children do that frequently get them injured, and she's getting injured. And she's being told, haha, you're being injured, you shouldn't do that. We see her struggling to get into the Air Force, which is kind of interesting because where they set this in the timeline of the Marvel Universe, women were fighting to actually get in to do jet fighting and jet piloting and stuff like that. Wouldn't it have been more interesting if we actually had that extra context in the movie?
Yeah, we didn't get that.
Of seeing her being like one of the first women trying to be a pilot.
I think they hinted it. But that was
they hinted at it, but wouldn't it have been better if we actually saw her face adversity?
Yeah.
And then Wanda Lawson comes and says, hey, I like your passion, I like your energy, I like that you want to make the world a better place. I got a special military project that will allow you to use your talent and fly, even to fly into the stars.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been good in the movie?
I mean, there was some adversity, in the real world, but it wasn't explained. But what we did get, it was like little snippets of a guy telling her, you know why they call it the cockpit. And when she was in training, they were like, oh yeah, you're never going to make it in the Air Force. And
also, context-wise, I have friends who are in the military. People will talk shit about you when you're doing things to try to encourage you to show them not to. Yeah. So we don't know if these guys were being sexist assholes or if they were being assholes to try to encourage her to overcome adversity.
Yeah. But it would have been an interesting thing for them to go like, "Oh, women don't fly in the military," and then she was like, "Well, I'll prove you wrong," and then she did. But they didn't give us that. They just only alluded to like, "Oh, just what is it? Systemic sexism." Yeah, which that's not the issue because it was actually a systematic sexism.
And also, it just doesn't make an interesting movie. Yeah. And that's like, I understand what you're trying to express to me artistically, but it's not interesting how you're expressing it.
Yeah.
So eventually the Skrulls find something useful to them. It's like, hey, wait, that person over there, back in reverse. Which is when she starts to realize something's going on, and she eventually wakes up from being, telepathically having her mind raided. And we meet Wanda Lawson, who I'm going to be talking about more later, and introduced to her project. And we get to see the crash that we'd seen a altered version of the ending of in the beginning of the movie. Now, it's not that any of these things are hard to follow, but they're wasting too much time re-showing them when they could have just showed them once effectively and had it stick with you. So she gets out of her bondage. She's wearing cuffs. So how does she get out of her cuffs when she's on a planet, on a ship full of evil Skrulls? She just punches them until the cuffs come off. And then she just punches them until the ship starts to go down, and then she gets into an escape pod, and she lands at Blockbuster Video. Hey, Jim, do you remember Blockbuster Video?
Hey, do you remember Radio Shack? Do you remember payphones? Do you remember TLC? Do you remember Salt and Pepper?
Do you remember bootleg Nine Inch Nails shirts that are bootlegged for the movie because they couldn't even buy a vintage bootleg Nine Inch Nails shirt?
Do you remember Garbage? Do you remember Nirvana? Hey, do you remember True Lies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger? Do you remember?
Who's gonna get?
Hey, do you remember? Do you remember Babe the Pig, the movie? Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Do you remember VHS?
I remember VHS.
Do you remember Discmans and pagers? Do you remember Street Fighter 2? Do you remember Smashing Pumpkins' hit album, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness? Do you remember internet cafes? Do you remember like getting disconnected from your online thing because someone made a phone call? Do you remember Windows 95 and loading things off CD-ROMs? Do you remember the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Do you remember Nerf guns? Oh, wait, no. You still have those in your office. But you remember them anyway. Do you remember cats? Do you remember beer? We're running out of stuff here.
Okay, so they made a big deal that this is part of the 90s because 90s nostalgia is important, but nothing here tied into 90s nostalgia.
Right. So I want to draw like another parallel. So there was a movie that I recommended you see. You saw it, right? Mid-90s?
Yes.
Okay. So when mid-90s was really kind of playing off 90s nostalgia, right? Which is what this movie was trying to do, and I don't think it did it effectively. The way that worked was there was like, for instance, there was a scene where the kid sat down and like he broke into his brother's room because he told him not to, and his older brother was abusive, and he went to his CD collection, found some CDs, and was listening to the CDs on his Discman while it's plugged into the wall, and he was sitting down listening to music. And it kind of touched on a lot of different things nostalgically for me. Like 1, CDs, 2, Discman. Having to sit down to listen to music. I haven't done that since the 90s. But all of that stuff played an important role to the plot of the story because 1, his brother was abusive, but he wanted to build rapport with his brother. So he went into his room to get CDs and listen to them. And he did it in a way that was very 90s. So that he could figure out what CDs that he had so that he could buy him a CD to try to build some rapport with him. And it didn't work because his brother was But all that stuff was there for a reason while also playing off of your nostalgia. None of that. She could have fell into a Best Buy and it would have worked. She could have fell into any store and it would have worked. She could have
also related to that thing about mid-90s. It also emotionally grounds you as the audience who experienced that nostalgia of like, hey, you remember having a bad day and laying down on your floor and listening to a CD player?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? So then you're able to emotionally connect with what the character on the screen is doing.
I've never fell through the roof of a Blockbuster. Not even when I was not even when I was into graffiti did I fucking fall through a Blockbuster.
Yeah. So
even when I had ample opportunity to do such a thing, that never happened. It's 7 years. I'm legally in the clear now, I guess.
Yeah. So Carol, of course, has to go to Radio Shack to get the thing to make her space alien technology work. Which that's a thing that's kinda, but not really a plot hole. That's a wait, what? ? Also, how could you boost signal on an alien communication device with a payphone?
That's not how a payphone works.
Would that mean it would somehow go to like a satellite dish somewhere on the phone grid?
Oh, I forgot about this. Do you remember Game Boy? Wait, that was 80s. Why was that in the movie?
Well, I mean, there were still Game Boys.
She bought a Game Boy to talk to aliens.
Yeah.
This was the thing that actually happened in the movie.
Like, here's another aspect of what they could have done with, like, the 90s nostalgia. I mean, she's a fish out of water space alien, right? Mm-hmm. She could, like, went to one of those seedy motels that are cheap that they have in Los Angeles and TV and movies. And she could have watched some 90s empowering female television, like Xena Warrior Princess.
Because I'm sure that they had color TV and HBO advertised on the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, she, of course, starts her whole thing of making feminist jokes at male authority figures who don't understand what's going on. Which annoyed me. But on the flip side, when the Skrulls land on Earth, they make a fun joke. One Skrull takes the form of an Asian female girl, and another Skrull takes the thing and says, hey, I already have this look. Get your own. See, that's how you make a joke that's funny.
Yeah.
That was one of the few jokes that I actually laughed at.
I thought it could have worked a little bit better if she would have done like the common female trope of like, hey, I'm wearing that.
Yeah. I
think that would have worked a little bit better. That's what I was thinking when that joke happened. I was like, oh, you could have played it a little bit better. But they didn't.
So we have Agent Coulson and Nick Fury trying to mansplain to Vers, warrior of the Kree Star Force, about what's going on because They don't know nothing about aliens crashing into the planet. Even though, they should, because S.H.I.E.L.D. was an organization that had knowledge of secret dark science from World War II.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the plot holes people are talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
that's not really a plot hole. That's just more of a oopsie.
That's an oopsie-doopsie, more of a thing. So, of course, a Skrull comes, and she chases the Skrull off. And then Fury tries to chase her, and they do a really badly shot train sequence of fighting. Which gets to the Stan Lee cameo, which I'll touch on in a moment. And it just looks like really bad TV. Like, this is kind of like a 90s cop TV show, felt like how they were shooting that whole sequence. Did that sequence work for you visually?
No, it didn't even feel like it was, and it wasn't until you just now mentioned that I was like, oh yeah, people were talking about the buddy cop thing. Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't get that feel of a buddy cop film.
That was what they were clearly trying to go for, but no, it didn't work.
Yeah, I guess it didn't work. Oops.
So the Stan Lee cameo.
Okay, so Stan Lee cameo, I thought was probably one of the best Stan Lee cameos. Am I wrong?
No, that is my favorite Stan Lee cameo. He played Stan Lee riding the train to go shoot Mallrats.
Yes.
And he was practicing his script for Mallrats.
Yes.
And Kevin Smith, who will cry on demand if you send him a check, cried about that. And I'm not going to say that that's a shill cry from Kevin Smith. I'm going to say
that was probably a legit cry.
It's probably a legit cry. If I was Kevin Smith and they did something like that about one of my movies in Stan Lee, I would have been happy.
I would have came. Also, I would have came.
The Stan Lee tribute at the beginning actually got a mild applause from everybody in the audience.
Yeah.
That was pretty dope.
Yeah. So what they did, we should explain it in case for people don't know, because maybe they're watching this to consider going to see it. Normally the little Marvel thing, how it flashes different characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe and comics, and then it transforms into the movie versions of them, and it kind of builds into like the texture of the Marvel logo. Well, they just replaced all of it with just different cameos and drawings of Stan Lee. And
behind the scenes shots of Stan in the movies.
And
it was really good.
And the I saw like one where they were hugging each other at some premiere or something with Martin Downey Jr.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
And also there's going to be a couple more Stan Lee cameos were filmed and in the can. I'm sneakingly suspicious that like they said, listen, we're not going to film this movie for a while yet, but we're going to film you and plug you in with CGI in case you die.
Yeah. I have a feeling that they've... Yeah. Maybe did he look younger in that movie? Did they make him look?
Well,
younger?
Yeah, they used the digital de-aging on him. So let's talk about that now.
If they did that, then guarantee they're going to be using him in other things.
But
because now they
the digital de-aging, the digital de-aging of Stan looked really bad.
I didn't notice it. I was so fucking. My eyes were so glued on that Mallrats script. Like what? Mallrats? Awesome.
I get that reference. I know what that is.
I know that movie. I recognize that movie.
Also, Agent Coulson was de-aged also, and he looked terrible.
Yeah, he looked terrible.
It looked like you just did like Photoshop and removed all wrinkles and also any defining lines in his face.
Yeah, he looked awful, but Samuel L. Jackson, they nailed it.
Did you think that there were like little moments where like the nose looked slightly off or the eyes looked slightly off? There were like a couple sequences where I'm not sure the way things were shot. It looked weird.
No, I was keeping a close eye on it because I kept going like, oh yeah, that's right. They de-aged him. And then I started looking really hard. But for the most part, I kept getting lost in it because they did a really good job. And I think that's a sign of a good job in CGI for something like that where you don't notice it. In fact, that's a good rule for all CGI. Did I notice that it's CGI? No, you did a good job.
So the big problem is that
it's like magic, right? Because that's one thing that when I was interested in magic for a while was that they said like if it looks like you didn't put any effort into it, that means that you put a lot of effort into it and you're doing a good job. Yeah.
So one problem with de-aging him though was like there was a sequence where he's petting Goose the cat, where he got up slowly because he's an old man and he was crouched down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were a couple of sequences where the physical acting ability of Samuel L. Jackson reminded me he was really an old man under a very good CGI job. So, you know, that may have been a thing where they might have wanted to have had a body double with his face, you know, deep faked on top of it.
Deep fake Samuel L. Jackson.
Oof. That sounds like a new hot porn search term.
Yeah. Captain Marvel and deep fake Samuel L. Jackson.
Oof. Oof. So they have an Alien Autopsy, and they reference Alien Autopsy, which was a 90s reference that I actually think went over well. I enjoyed that.
I wonder if Kevin Smith liked the fact that shortly after there was a Stan Lee cameo, there was a dick joke. I think he would think that was another nod to him.
Yes, it was. And so he gets ordered by his superior officer to not call anybody in. But he later does call people in. And his superior officer was the alien. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit of a plot hole, I think, there, maybe. But I also think they had to make him do something stupid to make Carol Danvers look so great.
Yeah, maybe.
Which is a problem I had with this movie, and I've had with a lot of other quote-unquote strong female protagonist movies, is we have to devalue the other characters to make them great. Like Maleficent. The only way we made you want to like or care about Angelina Jolie's character is to take all the good things other characters did, take that away, and give it to her character. That means you're not writing a compelling, interesting, or good character. That means, you're writing bad fan fiction.
Oh, no.
Don't do that. No, don't. And so Carol, does some Google... No, she uses Alta Vista. Excuse me, I can't even say...
Remember Alta Vista?
You see, I don't even remember if that was my go-to search engine before Google.
I think that was Yahoo.
There's Yahoo, there's Ask Jeeves.
Or was it Webcrawler? And it was Alta Vista
Webcrawler.
first.
Webcrawler, I think, was my go-to.
Yeah, Webcrawler was Alta Vista, though. The back end for it was... Or something. I don't know. I remember for a while, it was... Yahoo used to be like, we're Yahoo! Powered by Alta Vista.
Yeah.
Powered by Webcrawler. Powered by Google.
And so she's using a map, which I think is a little nod to feminist cultural critique humor about how men won't use maps, but a woman would. Mm-hmm. And then some guy on the bike comes up and says, well, you should smile more, which makes me think the whole little media storm about her not smiling for this movie was a deliberate plant by Disney so that they could stir up a certain kind of emotional critique, and then you see in the movies, see, this is exactly what she was talking about in real life, but it's in this movie. I don't think they reshot that into the movie. Mm. That seems like something really weird to have done as a reshoot.
Yeah, but you should smile more, baby. That's a common thing that they complain about.
Yeah. So I think, though, that got pushed into social media explicitly to tie into that sequence in the movie.
Yeah. And by the way, there was something there was two things that happened right about that same time that were really bad and did not make her look like a good person.
Her stealing
a bike and blowing up a jukebox in a bar.
Well, also she stole a knockoff Nine Inch Nails shirt, and they couldn't even buy an actual vintage knockoff Nine Inch Nails shirt.
Yeah, and a flannel.
Do
you remember flannels?
Do you remember grunge?
I used to wear flannels in the 90s because that was cool.
So Nick Fury finds her
and camouflage cargo pants.
Yeah, I remember those too. So Nick Fury finds her in a bar because he has access to a government database.
I had a cool one. I had one that was black and white and red. And people used to ask me, what is that camouflage for? Fire? You're going to hide in fire? I'd be like, yes, I'm going to hide in fire.
That's the last place people would look for you.
No one will ever look for me in fire. I'll be well hidden. Dead, but I'll be well hidden in the fire.
So Nick Fury finds her at the bar. And my big problem with that whole sequence is that how did he know that the bike was going to that bar? How did he find that bike and track it down from a theft back with 90s level police and military and spy technology?
Well, they know about things that are crazy, just not aliens. Oh wait, Guardians,
just not aliens.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh no.
Well, did he really know about them? Did they really? All they really did was just come down and pick him up and leave.
But still, I mean, this is why UFO conspiracy theory doesn't really work in the modern era. We got a lot of satellites looking at stuff on the ground. Mm-hmm. A lot of satellites. Aliens regularly leaving and coming in, that would take a lot of effort. Yeah. Or some really advanced technology that we can't imagine. So, she finds her at the bar. She gets him to reveal deep and important secrets about himself, like he only likes diagonal toast. Which I'm expecting.
No, he doesn't. He won't eat cut toast if it's cut diagonally.
He won't eat diagonally cut toast, yeah.
Which, I don't know. I love when sandwiches are cut diagonally. Am I weird? Does that make me a weird person?
I mean, it's a club sandwich. Who doesn't like a club sandwich?
Club sandwiches are fucking great.
But we set up certain things about him as a character. He's a former soldier, which was already established. And he was a former intelligence operative, which was already established. So why is he playing the junior man to Vers, agent of Space Force? Why isn't he the one trying to help guide her through the planet that, to his perspective at this point in the movie, he's an alien planet to her? Well, why was it written that way, other than to give a certain feminist tone that women know the way? Can you think of anything?
I'm sorry, I was too busy looking for club sandwiches on Grubhub.
Remember, kids, use Grubhub in case you need food, unless you're planning to stage a fake hate
Subway. Crime. Does Subway have club sandwiches? They're open late. I don't know. In case you want to get food, that's why they open.
Yeah. So they drive through the desert to TLC's.
I'm going to be like the white Tupac. Go ahead.
So they drive through the desert to Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls, which...
Do you remember TLC?
One of the things that bothers me is none of the 90s music they chose really, really seemed
fitting
to uplift any of the scenes or really connect to any of them.
Yeah, okay, so the one that... Okay, so we got like Garbage. That fit. But she's from another world, so why would she know Garbage? Why would she be listening to Garbage?
I don't know.
So I wouldn't expect Samuel Jackson to listen to TLC. No. There's plenty of other 90s music that he probably would listen to. And any one of those would have worked, but that didn't. There was another scene where I don't remember the song. I can't remember. I can't put my finger on what the song was, but when she goes and meets her friend, there was another song playing, and I was like, I don't think that she would probably listen to TLC Waterfalls.
Yeah.
That would have been a good song to play in that scene.
Now, like the non-90s music, none of that was really memorable. There's no sequence where there's actually the soundtrack for the music that was made just for the movie that really resonated to me at all.
Nope.
Whereas the 90s music all registered.
Oh, except for one. That was the Avengers theme at the end.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a good piece of music.
Yeah. And I would play it right now if I wouldn't get copy striked.
Yeah, that would be such a big copy strike. So, yeah, the music was, again, not using the 90s as a setting appropriately. And so they go into Project Pegasus, which at this point in the MCU is a joint U.S. Air Force and NASA project, even though it's actually in Marvel Comics, a Department of Energy project. That's not my big problem there. This is a top-secret compartmentalized program. I don't care who you are. If you're not need to know on a top-secret compartmentalized program, you're not going there. So for Samuel L. Jackson to have driven onto that base, he would have had to have been cleared in advance. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how Mafia works in this scenario.
Yep.
But somehow he was able to get on there and not be cleared so we could have a plot for this sequence of the movie. Which is another sign that your writing is lazy. I liked the sequence where they were locked up in the security room.
Yes, that was good.
They had some good detective work there. That's like the part of the movie, the only part that made me feel like, oh, this is a buddy cop movie. Yeah, that part there resonated with me. And so Carol finds out, oh, hey, this weird lady who was my mentor in my dreams is the lady who invented this spaceship here. And oh, hey, she's an alien just like me. And I'm going to send off the human to go somewhere else. And we're going to reveal he actually caused problems. And then I'm going to try to escape and leave him. But remember, oh, wait, I can't do that. And then have to come back and save him. Now, a missed opportunity there would have been to have one of the Skrulls take Samuel L. Jackson's shape.
Which does
and do the classic "Who's the real one?"
And that would have been an interesting thing to play on, but they didn't ever do that.
That would be something interesting to play on, especially if she found some diagonally cut toast. And like she brought
it full circle.
Exactly. Then the diagonally cut toast thing wouldn't have been just a dumb joke line that somebody will come up with a better use for later in another movie. But it would have actually
like
worked.
A good writer.
Like a good writer, yeah. And we also meet Goose the cat. Now, there's only 2 actual live shots of the cat. Most of the rest of it is CGI, but they had 5 cats. And Goose was one of the more charismatic cats I've ever seen on TV or film. He was a high point, but I don't think he stole the show.
And he wasn't a Garfield where he was talking.
You were wanting a Garfield space cat?
No, I didn't want that. I wanted an actual cat, and I got an actual cat.
And he behaved like an actual cat, too.
Yeah. Except when things came out of its face.
Well, I mean, if cats could have tentacles that can eat a galaxy come out of their face, they would.
Yeah. Or a Tesseract.
Yeah, or a Tesseract. So they escape, and they're going off to Magic Black Lady's house, who's going to help Carol, get her groove back and be able to fight the space alien. Also, during this point in time, she talks to Jude Law, who reveals, oh yes, Mar-Vell was a renegade Creed, and I can't talk to you about everything. What's the point of that sequence? She could have just said Mar-Vell. She said it says her name was Wanda Lawson, but it says Mar-Vell here in these notes. We could have just completely done away with Jude Law's entire sequence here. And for the actual antagonist for her character, he was utterly insignificant throughout the whole movie. Which, again, is a sign of lazy writing. It wasn't good writing. Somebody should have taken another pass at this. So, you want to know why they gender swapped the original Captain Marvel from a man to a woman?
No.
So, they decided they couldn't figure out who they wanted to be Mar-Vell. They said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if that's who she sees as the Supreme Intelligence? I said, yeah, that would be neat. We already cast Annette Bening for it, so we're going to make her into a Whammo. Which thematically works with this whole thing, like, Carol doesn't need a man to get her powers or to be inspired by. She could just be good and heroic on her own without any external agency or without any internal agency. She just does the right thing because she does the right thing. So, wasn't super into the original OG Captain Marvel. I actually liked the third character that they had be Captain Marvel, who was his son. He, I thought, was an interesting character. Although that wasn't even his original name. They introduced him initially as Legacy. And then later, they had him take Captain Marvel away from Monica Rambeau, who we feature later in the movie as a little kid. Who I'm betting is going to build a spaceship or fly a spaceship in Avengers Endgame. Well, wouldn't you say that's why they talked about the spaceship line, Jim? Doesn't that seem like the obvious thing they're trying to signal with that? So,
I don't comics, so...
Well, no, this is why I'm talking about what's in the movie. How the little kid said, I can fly a spaceship when I grow up. Don't you think that's going to be what they're going to have her do in Endgame?
Oh, I wasn't paying that close of attention.
I think that's like a nod of something that's going to happen in Endgame. So it's like, oh. Or possibly Captain Marvel, too.
Oh, so, yeah, she was an adult. She's got to be an adult now.
Exactly.
Oh.
So if we're seeing these kind of obvious little future plot seeds here, they're not really doing as good of a job as they have in the past. Where they've been very, very light with their touch. That's another consistent problem with this movie. It's heavy when it needs to be light. And it's light when it needs to be heavy. So, the big thing with Mar-Vell, the original version of the character, the most significant thing in the comics is he died of cancer. And the smartest people in the Marvel Universe were like, nobody knows how to cure cancer. I mean, sure, I could build an extra-dimensional gateway that could take you to Asgard, the home of the gods, who we'll find out later can cure cancer like that, but we can't cure cancer. My insane super science doesn't have that ability. So, like, the original version of the character had an iconic story where he died, and up until fairly recently in comics, he stayed dead. He was one of the two characters who stayed dead. So, do you think it's a waste to just have it be, oh yeah, this cameo, it's totally that iconic character that has a cultural significance from comic books? Also, we don't find out why Mar-Vell's on Earth as a scientist. We know what she's researching. We also don't know how she got the Tesseract. Although the director of the movie said, let me actually pull up her quote. Our thought was they just had gotten this thing, but they didn't know anything about it. They just kind of had it lying around somewhere at S.H.I.E.L.D., and Mar-Vell was able to use it to create her Lightspeed engine at Pegasus. Only her as an alien would even know how it had all this power and figure out how to harness it. But don't you remember how S.H.I.E.L.D. had a whole bunch of Hydra agents in it, and the Hydra agents knew how it worked? Also, don't you remember how Howard Stark found it? And how Howard Stark was reverse engineering that technology so he knew how it worked? So, does this feel like they're having people write these movies now who don't watch the movies?
Possibly.
That's a disappointing element to me in the whole movie. And we have Carol causing the accident, which gives her her own powers, which is an important difference from the comic book. But wouldn't that, again, be an important time to focus on her overcoming adversity and becoming a hero? And making a choice that she knows will probably kill her, and in turn, she earns having superpowers. That's how they used to write comic books, and how they used to write these kind of movies back when things were better. They also don't explain how she was able to draw the MacGuffin power. But we now have an interesting little conundrum. So Vision got power from one of the stones. Doctor Strange got power from one of the stones. Captain Marvel got power from one of the stones. Scarlet Witch got power from one of the stones. And none of these characters are dead. Or at least, actually, I don't remember. Did Wanda die in the thing? At the end of Infinity War? So if Wanda died, then, they're all dead. And then you have Gamora, who was sacrificed for the Soul Stone. We still need an extra character for the Sixth Stone, but that's how they're going to... That, I think, is going to be a plot component for the next movie. That all these characters who have a connection to the stones will be key to defeating Thanos. And also, they did a big comic book arc recently where that was a major plot point. Where characters got one of the stones. And which stone did Miss Marvel get? She got the Space Stone. Excuse me, Captain Marvel. She got the Space Stone, so she's connected in the comics to the same thing she's connected to in the movie.
Okay.
Which is a little interesting bit of a deep cut. So she goes, she meets her friend, it's like, oh, hey, Carol, we used to be great friends. Here's some mild banter that suggests something interesting that we're not going to see in this movie. And hey, let's look at some fun family pictures that's going to suggest interesting and intricate character relationships that we're not going to see in this movie until the plot happens.
Yeah, which, by the way, we could have cut a giant exposition out of the film, made it interesting, and then filled that extra time with that exposition that could have been interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the shape-shifting Skrullian would say, no, we're not terrorists, we're just, poor refugees. And the evil, hateful Kree, who we found out from another movie that you're not a part of, are bad. They're actually bad. So here's another element I have a problem with this movie. So she's part of a team of space Nazi super soldiers, right? shouldn't we have had hints in how everybody behaved that these were bad people who do bad things? And shouldn't that have been the point of conflict with her character, where she realized that, oh, hey, this is not a good way to do things? And then that comes around at the end of the movie when she has her realization. Oh, wait, no, I wasn't a jerk. These people are murderous, genocidal a-holes. Wouldn't that have been good writing?
Yeah.
And then we get to see the Windows 95 joke. Remember Windows 95 and how slow things loaded?
Yeah. I remember CD player for Windows.
Yeah. Yeah. We were all audibly groaning in my theater when that joke happened. Yeah. That was another thing I've seen other people comment on. None of the jokes really worked in this movie. They weren't structured well. They weren't well thought out. They weren't well timed. So I'm not entirely sure what they hired these directors for. They were very good for the sequence with Maria and Carol, although the script didn't really allow for it to be good. They were so I don't really grasp why that's a thing. And then this happens, and they say, oh, well, we're going to go into space and do the thing with the MacGuffin in space. And she then has the little kid change her costume up, making it loosely off of the Air Force colors. And, oh, yeah, also, little kid says the joke, says, hey, Mom, why don't you fly this dangerous spacecraft that you don't know how to use to be a better role model for me as a young girl? That was terrible. That was a terrible line.
By the way, we lost you for just a second, and I at the time I had something important happen, so
okay,
we lost a little bit. Sorry,
that's weird. I heard a little hiccup there, but when I went to check the Discord, you were still on.
Yeah.
So that works out good, I guess.
Whatever. Anyways, and I don't exactly know what you missed. So yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So they go to the ship, and they go to find the MacGuffin. But guess what? The bad guy wasn't looking for the MacGuffin. He was looking for his family. So he really wasn't a bad guy after all. He just wanted to reunite with his family who were secretly on Earth. Couldn't he have, just said that? Some point in the sequence where he's trying to get the character to trust him? Why did that have to be a swerve? Why did they have to, change that in the movie? That didn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. I thought it was interesting enough.
I think it was good. I think at this point,
I was more kind of like, oh, my expectations were so low at that point with the initial really bad writing thing with the subway sequence, the very beginning, the alien subway, not the Los Angeles subway. And I was just kind of like, okay. And so when it started picking up and actually started getting interesting, I was like, oh, okay. So I was having a little bit of a Wonder Woman moment, because Wonder Woman, which by the way was a good movie, the reason why I liked it so much was because I was expecting Suicide Squad, but instead I got Wonder Woman. Movie instead. Yeah, I got a good movie instead. So it was a little bit heightened. So that's kind of why I ended up saying that I liked the movie, because I realized that, yeah, it was a good movie, but my expectations were really low.
So we have Carol then get captured by her former friends, and she gets bound up again by Supreme Intelligence. That's why you see all the little tendrils of computers there. It's because it's a bondage metaphor visually. And I want you to think about that.
Give me one more second. Keep going.
Okay. So the bondage metaphor, and she goes to confront the Supreme Intelligence in her head. And the Supreme Intelligence starts to get a little bit cocky and preening, and I'm thinking, why didn't we see this characterization throughout the Supreme Intelligence uses in the movie? In fact, why didn't we see the Supreme Intelligence more often in the movie? Other than the fact that they decided to cast it as Annette Bening, so it only looked like Annette Bening, which only made sense because of the way they characterized how it looked for Carol's character. They kind of wrote themselves into a corner on that one. And she pulls off the thingamajiggy, and she remembers, oh yeah, every time I fell down, I got up. Even though I haven't really fallen down, I've just been temporarily stopped by a larger group of people who are holding my friends hostage. And then she just got Super Saiyan level 5 and started beating everything. But she's like, oh, I'm beating everything just as a distraction for everybody else. But it just was unbelievable at that point. Now, she was fun, she was feeling liberated, and if we had actually had her restrained and repressed earlier in the movie, this would have been the emotional climax of the film. But they didn't do that in the writing. They didn't show us the theme that they wanted the movie to have. Then why have the theme in the movie in the first place? And then we see her just blow up a spaceship that it took an entire planetary defense net to blow up in another movie, but no, she could just blow it up. And she could tell them, hey, don't mess with Earth, or I'll get you. Grr. And then we go to the big fight at the end, which we talked about at the beginning of this review. The other really significant thing I want to talk about... Jim, are you still there? Are you back? Okay. The other significant thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll have to sum this back up when Jim gets back here, is the Kree and Skrull and their relationship in the comics. Because, and also how that Skrull background in the comics connects to potential future themes in the movies. So the Skrulls were an advanced race who were retarded by the... Okay, good. So the Skrulls were an advanced race, and they were trying to uplift the two races on Hala. One of those being the blue-skinned Kree, who captured their technology and then became a more advanced race and fought them in a war. Again, missed opportunities here is they could have alluded to that. They could have alluded to the fact that the Skrulls were superior to the Kree at one point, but the Kree have become a dominant race. And in the comics, the Skrull homeworld was destroyed by Galactus, the Eater of Worlds, which is, I think, a thing that we're going to see in future movies. So the Skrulls as refugees, I think, was a dictated from the top plot point.
So you're saying that maybe the end of Endgame is the Destroyer of Worlds eats Thanos?
No.
Oh.
But I think that's going to be like the new Thanos. After Endgame, we're going to have a movie that sets up Galactus. And Kevin Feige's wanting to get, Silver Surfer into quick production. Though they may use the Eternals and the Celestials instead of Galactus, that I'm not 100% sure on. Because they also, in another little Elseworld, like what if side strain of the comics, they actually had the Celestials being bad guys and that the Skrulls were one of their more advanced manipulated races. But again, I would have liked to actually see the Skrull and Kree conflict more than blue space Nazis bad, green refugees good. I would have liked to have seen some nuance. Because that would have made a more interesting and enriching story. So yeah, that's the spoiler review. And again, Jim and I both liked this movie.
Yeah, I did not think it was a bad movie. If someone were to say like, "Hey, I don't really watch any of the Marvel movies. I hear it's good. Should I watch it?" My answer would be no. No. I'd say go. There's a list of like the best to not the best to worst, but the in order of sequence of watching all of the Marvel movies. I think it starts with Iron Man. Mm-hmm. And then goes to Incredible Hulk. Then it kind of bounces around through where they are in the release dates, but they're kind of like in order, except for like when it goes into Captain America, like it interrupts, kind of like, oh, before we get into the next movie, you need to go and watch the movie that came out a couple years in advance or whatever, so you can go and catch up before the Avengers movie. So there's kind of like kind of bouncing around, but it kind of tries to keep everything in a good timeline. There's a good way of watching it, and it starts with Iron Man. So I'd tell you, like, go find that list, watch Iron Man first, and then kind of watch them in order. Movie. Yeah. Even though this movie is supposed to take place before this first one, and she's actually supposed to be the first Avenger. Oh, by the way, we need to change Captain America's name.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I actually forgot to talk about that. So Samuel L. Jackson gets his eye effed up by the cat. Not in some cool spy way.
By the way, when I saw that, I was like, that's fucking stupid.
My biggest problem is that they kind of made it seem like Fury was a cat person.
Yeah.
And if you're a cat person, and the cat's making that kind of noise to you, you put that cat down.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a cat you don't really know well.
Well, if it's got a tesseract in its stomach, you can't really put it down.
Yeah, that's a whole other side.
Are you talking about put it down, kill it, or are you talking about put it down on the ground?
Put it down on the ground.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if a cat is acting feral, there's really nothing you can do. But if the cat's angry with you, you go, oh, okay, sorry. My bad.
Sorry, Mr. Furry Thing. Here you go.
Yeah. Unless it's your cat where you're like, hey, don't you talk to me like that. And then it doesn't anymore.
Yeah. So that's how he lost his eye, which they've had a characterization of Nick Fury.
I wasn't talking to you, Meffy. You're okay. She thought I was yelling at it. I was like, no, you're okay.
So they have a characterization of Nick Fury as a guy who uses deception as a tool, which would have been fine if he made this, I trusted someone once and I lost an eye. You need to keep both your eyes open. That would have been fine, but this was just like a throwaway gag. Yeah. And also, he suggests she names herself Captain Marvel after the Marvelettes, which is why wasting Marvel as a character and not making him be Captain Marvel and her taking the legacy on was a waste and really made the movie narratively make less sense. And yeah, so he's making the Avengers Initiative before he meets Tony Stark, before he's aware of the Asgardian threat, even though in the movies that's not how that happened. It's a little retcon here, and I'm concerned that that's going to become a bad habit in the future. We're at the point where we're seeing some consistent bad signs in this movie.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah. So there was the I don't know if you probably were talking about this while I was doing things. There was the fight scene that took place inside of the ship that's the satellite ship that's kind of orbiting the planet. Mm-hmm. With all the
Skrulls in it.
Yeah, the Skrulls. And they were having a big fight scene, and then No Doubt I'm Just a Girl starts playing, and it just felt so fucking wrong.
And I think that's actually been done in a better movie fight sequence at some point.
It doesn't. It's not a song that you can really fight to. It doesn't have that fight to it. There's other girl empowering songs that they could have chose, but I don't know why they chose No Doubt. But
also, it could have
worked.
There's also better songs from No Doubt that represent a fight.
Yeah, that are also empowering to women.
Yeah.
I think it could have worked if they would have Deadpooled it. If they went over to the CD, the CD player while they were fighting and knocked the CD player and it just fucking, picked one of it from. Do you remember the 5-disc CD changers?
Yeah,
remember those? If it just hit random, she bumped it with her butt or something and it just hit random, and then it just started playing that song, then it would have worked because it would have been funny. Oh, that's not the right kind of song you play for a fight, and it's kind of an empowering song for women at the same time.
Yeah,
and it would have done the 90s nostalgia thing. It would have got everything right, but no.
No, they didn't. Also, they had a thing with Minerva and Carol where she says, "Is this why you didn't like me all the time?" And she says, "No, blah, 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 blah." It's how women don't like each other, but we're making this about women's friendships and female empowerment. No. And also, a problem is Minerva actually has some cachet from the comics. And there's another character, Atlas, who had cachet from the comics, and they just didn't, do anything with these other characters. They were just there. They were just names. We have to put a name on this wall and say, this is who the wall is. It wasn't well thought out. So I think this is why some of these things are why I thought the direction and the writing was really bad, and I think Brie Larson will be okay in Endgame because there's going to be better writing and better direction. But they said this is the start of the future of the series. We're going to make, diverse characters. We got an Asian martial arts movie coming up. They're wanting to make a gay lead for the space god manipulated people movie coming up. They're going to probably pick one of Marvel's Hispanic characters to promote and move up. I'm okay with all of that, but make it a good movie.
We can't.
And if you're going to bring it up and not make it a good movie, and you're going to do lazy writing, it becomes clear that you only are casting them here as a marketing stunt, and you're only doing it to egg certain audience crowds on to aggregate and promote your stuff. So it's like free advertising. It's like how Trump got $5 billion in free advertising from the news media in the 2016 election. That's why he won, because the news media kept telling us that Orange Man was bad. And in large part, I think that's why Captain Marvel did so well in its initial weekend. It got promoted out by everybody on the internet arguing about it.
Yeah.
You know.
Which, by the way, after watching the Red Letter Media review, because I had not really paid too much attention to it, we talked about a few of the things, but there was a lot of other things that were going on with Brie Larson specifically that we did not get into, that I finally had got a chance to see. And I think I'm on the same page as Red Letter Media when they were saying, like, it doesn't seem like she was racist or sexist or anything like that, but
the way she expressed it was stupid.
Yeah, she didn't think it away. She definitely was not scripted when she was saying those things, and she probably should have, being it was an award show. You probably should have wrote something down. You're probably like, hey, maybe I shouldn't word it like this because it comes off like
it, again, in real life, and anybody listening, if you have to say things like, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist, I have lots of black, gay, whatever friends, you're probably going to say something that's going to come off as offensive. Yeah. You should just not. You should just not.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
So I'm going to pull up my list right now because here we go, Marvel fatigue. I had made a list, and I didn't include Ant-Man and the Wasp on this list yet. I thought I did. I thought I made that list. Was this one? Was it this one? Yes, it was. So I had a list of my rankings of movies. I don't know. I know you like pressing buttons on my keyboard, but if you keep doing that, I'm going to kick you out. So I'm trying to figure out like where I would place it in my ranking. Where would you put this, if anything? Do you have a list of the movies?
I don't have a list ready because my list changes every time I do this, but this is like 4th or 5th from the bottom.
Yeah, I would put this probably be between under Captain America, First Avenger, but above Incredible Hulk.
For me, this is better than Incredible Hulk, better than Thor: The Dark World, better than Iron Man 2, and depending on how I feel about it, maybe better than Iron Man 3. I'm not a particular fan of Iron Man 3.
I have it actually higher on my list. I should go over my list real quick. And this does not include Ant-Man versus the Wasp. I have to really think about that one. I don't even think Ant-Man is on this one. Oh, no, it is. I'd put Ant-Man probably right underneath it. Or Ant-Man above Ant-Man and the Wasp.
And you know why I would put Ant-Man over this one? It's because Ant-Man has like a heist movie vibe.
Yeah.
And it's got like little fun gags with shrinking and growing thing.
Yeah. Okay, so
it has things happening.
Okay, so I'd say like number 1, Infinity War. This list is a little contentious. I found out, by the way. So so Avengers: Infinity War, Captain America: Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Thor: Ragnarok, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Iron Man 3, Iron Man. Fight me. Captain America: Civil War, Marvel: The Avengers, Ant-Man versus the Wasp, or Ant-Man and the Wasp, rather. I keep saying versus. I don't know why. Captain America: First Avenger, Captain Marvel, Incredible Hulk, Avengers: Age of Ultron, Thor, Iron Man 2, and then Iron Man: Dark World. Obviously, is the worst thing in the Marvel universe. Obviously,
all of these movies are entertaining.
All of the except for Dark World.
Dark World was kind of entertaining, but he was pushing it.
It was a trudge for me. It really was a trudge. It was really hard for me to get through.
But so this is our spoiler review of Captain Marvel. We may be talking in the next recording in progress, which will be in 2 days, about some of the related issues that have been expanding and growing off of this. But we wanted to kind of unpack the spoilerific goodness.
Yeah, I also want to talk about Tim Pool's review of it because that was just dumb.
What did Tim Pool say? I forgot.
He said it was the worst. He said it was awful, and anybody who says that it's a good movie is lying.
Well, I wouldn't call it a good movie. I would say it's entertaining.
I would say that it is a good movie, but that's the problem.
For me, if we're talking Marvel movies and we're talking good movies, we're talking things like Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Like Ragnarok. Yeah. Like Guardians of the Galaxy. Movies that are actually good from a qualitative standpoint.
I'm just saying that from just a film standpoint, just going to go see a movie, it's a good movie. But that's the problem, is that we have to compare it to other Marvel movies, and in the realm of other movies, that's where we're starting to get into the ones that are just not good.
Well, I would say this is fine. It's not great, but it's fine. Like, for example, Aquaman was a better movie than this. And it was also a more fun movie because the hero had flaws. He was a little bit goofy, and his being goofy got him into trouble. But when, time came up for him to get good, he got good.
Yeah. Because
we can emotionally relate to the character. And that's the problem. Now, this was entertaining because Samuel L. Jackson is entertaining. It's kind of neat to see him de-aged. Ben Mendelsohn was entertaining as the lead Skrull. The cat was neat. But there wasn't really a lot of entertaining meat in the movie.
Yeah.
There's like little isolated flavors in the movie that were entertaining. And they were strung together effectively enough that I didn't have a terrible time. And
it was not a trudge. It didn't have. There was parts of the movie where I was genuinely entertained and I was having a good time, and then there was other parts of the movie where I was like, why did they do it like that? They could have done it like this, and it would have been 100 times better.
Let's talk about the politics.
And it would have been much more of a like respect whammons type of thing. That would have been genuine, and 2, wouldn't have rubbed your nose in it, and 3, would have conveyed the same message much more effectively, and 4, wouldn't have alienated anybody.
Well, let's actually get back to that. Yeah. What if Carol's character was actually restrained by having to be a good and upright Kree?
Yeah.
And like she was being, whacked on the nose with a newspaper by her commander, but saying, look, I know you're going to be great. You're going to be your best self, but you need to get it back in line. You play off some tension between her and Minerva, and then she gets to Earth and begins to see humans being normal and emotional, and you see how the emotions in Fury and Coulson work, to advance the plot, and then she achieves an emotional breakthrough when she sees Maria later in the movie.
Yeah,
that would have effectively told the feminist themes the movie was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But without that part there, it doesn't make any darn sense.
No.
If we take the flashback sections and just slam that in the first act of the movie, have the Skrulls reviewing her memory as a framing device, and, then as happens in the thing, she busts out, punches people, she shows up on Earth, she tells us she's a member of Star Force, and, hey, here's an idea, what if when they go to Pegasus, she's not even going there initially to find out about Dr. Lawson? What if she's going there initially because she knows that's the best broadcast transmitter on the planet? Which would make way more sense for her to use as her broadcast point than, Radio Shack.
And Game Boy.
And in the process of doing that...
90s.
In 90s.
You remember the 90s?
Yep. And in the process of doing that, Nick Fury mentions Pegasus to her as well because he's investigating something weird about the whole Pegasus project that's kept hush-hush. That was his B-plot investigation before she crashed into the Blockbuster Video. That way, things could have converged, and then it would have been better. Yeah. Then it really would have been a buddy cop film. This is should not have been difficult for people to have thought in the writing room.
Yeah.
And then we would have had her emotionally grounded. We would have had her being the friend who supported her black friend lady in raising her kid as a single mom.
By the way, it would have been much more interesting that instead of going into Radio Shack and then buying things like vacuum cleaners and Game Boys or whatever the hell she bought, that she actually would have done something that really would have been nostalgic for Radio Shack at that time. People didn't go to Radio Shack to buy Game Boys and cell phones and stuff. No. They went to Radio Shack because they wanted stuff to build radios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
that was a thing back in the day with you would go to Radio Shack to not buy computers. You would go there to buy transistors and circuit boards, and then you could build your own logic gates and you could build your own little radio systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. That she could have built like a little radio instead of using a payphone. But no, we needed to have payphones because remember payphones? Remember Game Boys? Remember pagers?
And like they actually had a little mini character arc for Agent Coulson in the movie. Like this was how Agent.
How did she buy the stuff? Did she break in?
She stole it.
Oh no.
She just stole things.
But she was supposed to be a good person. Why is she stealing bikes and blowing up jukeboxes?
Well, because capitalism is a tool of the patriarchy to oppress them. So her only way to resist the patriarchy is to steal.
But it wasn't oppressing her. I mean, not even. It's not even getting political. It's just. She just showed sarcastic. Up. She just got there. She wasn't being oppressed by anything yet.
Yeah, and that's really the deep mining on the spoiler review here. Unless you have anything else that comes to your mind, Jim.
We talked about the music. We talked about the '90s things. If you're coming into this movie going like, I want to have a fun time watching people get punched.
Space Later lazy.
Yeah, and fuck it, little '90s nostalgia couldn't hurt. You'll have a good enough time. If you're coming into this going like, oh, I want to get into some '90s nostalgia, just don't. No. Go and watch mid-'90s because that's actually a really good movie, and it touches on all the '90s nostalgia, and not just in a way to saying, "Hey, remember Super Nintendo?" No, because with the times that they brought up the Super Nintendo, it served a function in the advancement of the plot. When they brought out the Discman, it served an essential function to the plot. When they were recording things on, do you remember handy cams and video cameras? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I remember.
It wasn't just, hey, do you remember camcorders? It was, hey, do you remember camcorders? Well, cool. We're actually using this because it's going to be an important part of the plot later on. Right. And it's also an important thing that's happening right now, too.
By the way, this is really good that we cut this out of the main video because we've been doing this for like 81 minutes.
Yeah, it would have gone on a while.
Yeah, we got 81 minutes worth of spoiler takes on this bad boy.
Do you got a number rating for this movie?
I give this movie 5 3/4 stars.
I would probably give it 6 around it, but that's about right. Yeah, it's pretty good. I thought I may have liked it a little bit more than you, but apparently. No, maybe I overstated your disagreements with it. Maybe
it's fine. Yeah. It's not so much that I disagreed with it; it's that it should have been so much better.
Yeah, and it could
have been well thought out. This script needed somebody else who could write it over. Oh, also something else to talk about: the amnesia. Mm-hmm. They threw amnesia in because it's the only thing people remember from her original '80s characterization when Rogue stole her memories and her soul and her powers. Mm-hmm. There's no other reason for her to have amnesia. And that amnesia comes from her having a bad sense of imposter syndrome because she took over in the shadow of Mar-Vale. But that relationship doesn't exist, so her having...
I thought they said that they removed her memories from her so they can program her to be a good...
Yeah, but I mean, from a meta story standpoint.
Okay.
There's no point in having her be an amnesiac beyond... is something that everybody remembers about her character. So if we didn't have the amnesia, she didn't need to be in Kree Star Force. And here's a question: was Kree Star Force necessary for the plot of the movie? Because we already knew the Kree were bad guys from Guardians of the Galaxy. Mm-hmm. She could have fought the Skrulls. And the Skrulls could have been...
I think maybe if they're going to put this on a continuum, like how I said that there's a list of movies and how you're supposed to watch them in order. Maybe you're supposed to watch this before Iron Man. Maybe. I don't know where they're going to put this in that timeline.
Like, if Carol wasn't part of the thing, if we did the whole, like, alternate, flashback as the beginning of the movie, she gets her powers, then Nick Fury investigates, and then she's working with Fury, and then Skrulls happen, and then they discover from the Skrulls about the Kree and all that, and how they're refugees, and how they're hiding in the planets, but Mar-Vell's experiment warned them. That would have been a much more coherent narrative, but we couldn't use the Kree as parallels for human sexism and domination of emotions of women by men.
When is the Phase 4 coming out? Is this a Phase 4 movie, or is it still...
No, Phase 4 will be anything that happens after the new Spider-Man movie. So basically, the new Spider-Man movie wraps up the current phase of Marvel. Like, they're not going to announce any of the new movies until after that. We know what things are in production, but not what's going to be coming up for rotation. The big question I have is what Hispanic character they're going to bring up to be the Mexican for the series. Because that's the racial politics that people have clearly successfully bought into. So let's see what Mr. Google has to say. And if Alta Vista existed, I would have used Alta Vista. White Tiger is the most well-known one. They have others, but they're mutants. Let's see here. Trying to find someone who's not a mutant or connected to Spider-Man. Most of the Hispanics or mutants are connected to Spider-Man. So, I mean, if they're going for somebody, there's White Tiger. There's America Chavez, who came from the recent comics, but was poorly written by its original creator. And yeah, that's what they have as options unless they start rating the X-Men franchise for characters.
Which Disney now owns Fox. Is that official now?
It's going to be official in 7 days.
Oh, nice. So that's how they're going to bring him in, probably.
Well, I figure they got a scene shot or going to be shot to tie it in at the end of Endgame. That would be the simplest way to do it.
I wonder if they keep the original cast or what's going on with that.
Yeah, there's also a really obscure character called Lightning Man, Living Lightning. So that's a third option, but it's most likely going to be White Tiger or America Chavez as the Hispanic character to be the Hispanic face of the franchise. Unless they decide to reboot another character and make it Hispanic. So that's a question of who's going to be next. Are we going to get a Hispanic character? Because we already have a gay character lining up in the pipe, and we got an Asian. And who do they nail down next after they nail down the Hispanic, the Asian, and the gay to get this going?
The gays are already nailed, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but they've already got a movie. They're looking for a gay lead. And, they can make a big deal of casting a Jewish Ben Grimm. But I'm not sure what Jewish actor they would go for. They can make a big deal out of that. They're going to cast an actual blind actress to play Alicia from Fantastic Four. Maybe they can make Silver Surfer Hispanic. Cast a Hispanic actor to play Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our spoiler review and a little talk about the future of the MCU.
Yeah, we'll get into the politics of the whole thing on the next episode. Hey.
Yeah, we'll talk about some other stuff. Yeah, Worms.
Wait, that was 2000s. That wasn't 90s. Damn it. So yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Is it
tomorrow?
No,
it's Friday.
Well, yeah, I thought it was Thursday. God damn it.
Yeah, we were originally planning it, but we said, we can do it today.
All right, Worms.